On this episode of the Dudes and Dads podcast, we talk with our friend Chris Russell about human trafficking.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMont and Andy Lehman.
Andy,
Hi, Joel.
how are you?
I'm good, I think. I pushed all the right buttons tonight and got this thing going.
Nice. You know, every once in a while, Andy, something happens. The podcast fairies come in, and they change some things around. And boy, do I love to watch you just put it all back together.
You know, though, Joel, it's way better than having to set it up every time we go ahead and do one of these things.
That's so true.
Because that never works. That never works.
Love it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Dudes and Dads podcast. Glad to have each and every one of you with us. Maybe you're watching the stream right now. Maybe you're not. But if you're not and you want to,
You should.
you should.
Now, you can watch nowstreaming.live. That's where you can find us at.
Nowstreaming.live. Is this a new edition?
No,
Andy?
we've had it for a while.
See, this goes to show you what I know. I don't know.
I
where
do the tech
things-
stuff for this show.
I
Joel.
don't know where the things are, but yeah, glad to have each and every one of you here tonight. Excited about our conversation. So much to learn.
Joel, what is new though tonight?
You know what? Thanks for asking. I left Josiah attending a large bonfire. Is what I did.
Is your wife home?
She is.
Oh,
And
okay,
I
good.
Had a clear line of sight. He's a Boy Scout. He's 13. I'm sure it's fine.
I mean, I trust him. And all
I'm sure
that.
it's fine. No, I was clear about the parameters of needing, number one, that all fuel sources need to be in far distance from that. But we had a lot of brush and things that had to get burned. And you know the weather, the way it's been.
Right.
While it's dry
been-
and there's no wind, it's like, let's get on it.
Right. I had a fire last night because of that same reason.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
I've got to get it out there and get the brush
Get
done when I can.
Get it done. And because of the summer and spring sports stuff that's all goes on, that also limits my weekend burning opportunities.
It does.
So when you get it, you jump on it, you go.
Yeah.
And then I had to get here to the studio. And so I was like, Josiah, I think this is good for you.
You can handle this.
You can handle this. Please don't burn the garage or the barn down, please. So
Thanks. Yeah.
yeah. So as far as I know, everything's going great, Andy. I guess we'll find out when we get back. How are things going for you?
Good. So tonight we are actually doing a Zoom back channel for our Patreon supporters.
And for those of you that are concerned, Zoom back channel is entirely legal, I'm told. It's entirely on the up and up.
It's essentially just a Zoom meeting that you can be in and chat and with other listeners and talk. And then if you actually want to talk and we want to bring you on, we will bring you on the show.
Andy, I thought that when we sent a man to the moon, I said that is the pinnacle of technological innovation and achievement.
Oh, no.
And yet here you are tonight talking about the Zoom back channel. And I say, really, the sky's the limit. What else is possible? Before you'll be telling me that the time travel's next. I think that's probably the next step.
Doc Brown is next door, I think. Anyways, Joel, tonight we wanted to bring Chris Russell on. Chris is somebody that I've known for a little while. He's come and visited our church and talked a little bit about Destiny Rescue. And I remember thinking back then when he came to Clinton Frame.
Yeah.
This would be a great thing. And then we were at the I can't get the words out tonight. Fathers Matter Forum. That's hard to say.
It is.
The other week, and Chris had a booth not too far from us, and he said, I think that would be a great topic. This topic of human trafficking, and I said,
Nice.
yes, actually, it would.
It's always great to be in close booth proximity to people that are on mission, or on the same things. That's great.
So welcome to the show, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, hi, welcome.
Hey, thanks, guys. Little worried, Joel. Looking out the window, I see some smoke in the distance.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure what direction your house is from our location.
Well, that's we'll just ignore that and assume the best. It's gonna be
Close the blinds.
literally, it's gonna be in the back of my mind the entire time recording.
There's a reason your back is to Goshen.
Yeah, we're just gonna act like it's not happening. Chris, we always like to start off every show getting a little more info about you, and we like to call these the dad stats, as it were. So this is an opportunity for us to ask you to share anything you want to about yourself, your family, anything you want to put out on the interwebs. This is your time. But yeah, tell us about yourself, maybe a little background, where you come from, how you ended up doing what you're doing. and yeah, your family, all that good stuff. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it. So I've actually been living in the Goshen area since 2010. I came up here to be the lead pastor at Community Church of Waterford. So did that from 2010 to 19. And then that's when I came over full time with Destiny Rescue. So pastored for 23 years, and now I've been full time with Destiny Rescue for 5. But our church partnered with Destiny Rescue for 4 years before that. So I've been connected to the ministry for 9 years, but full time for a little over 5.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming you're married.
Yes. Yeah. My wife and I are married and 4 kids. Caleb is in Cincinnati. He'll be 25 next month. So
Nice.
I don't know how that works because the kids get older and we don't. Like, not sure how the math works on that, but, and then 3 girls. My wife and I adopted 3 girls 7 years ago.
Okay.
And
And by
the
that
oldest,
you mean all at one
yes,
time,
3
right?
sisters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the oldest
Beautiful.
one's actually going to be 21 on Saturday, another crazy one. And the 2 at home are 16 and 10. So, I didn't think this through really well, guys. So I grew up one of 3 boys. So getting 3 girls, there was a lot more drama with girls. And
Yeah.
that's why I tell people I volunteer to go on the road a lot to speak. Just kidding.
He loves
But
each and every one of you.
it is
deeply.
quite different. And I didn't think about the fact with the age difference that they had that I was going to have at least one teenage girl for the next 16 years of my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, let us know how that goes in
Yeah,
the future.
man. Wow. We'll keep that in mind.
I've got two girls that are coming up, and well, they're not actually. Well, one's teenager.
You have a teen. You
I
have a
have
teen girl.
teenager,
Yeah.
but the other one I think thinks she is sometimes. So
She's working on it.
She is. Yeah.
She is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Chris, if you I did the 3 boys and then the youngest is the girl. And Molly is a survivor. People just all the time with her, like, oh, you have 3 older brothers. They just assume, like, man, she's just having to overcome so much, right? And it's like, she's got it made. This is the baby of the family.
Yep.
She had this gig. She's restarted this up now, where her brothers will give her piggyback rides. And she's like, hey, let's go. And she just hops on.
When she gets older, any boy that's interested in her really doesn't stand a chance.
Yeah, that's
No.
how I feel about it too. So
You're not even going to have to step in, Dad. Your 3 boys will take care of that
I feel
for
fine. Chris, I do wonder because I don't know. I have a particular fascination and curiosity with this.
Sure.
For some strange reason, I'm wondering, stepping out of pastoral ministry and doing what you're doing now, have you felt like there was a very easy transition crossover? Have you had strange out-of-body experiences since then? I wonder what that's been
every
like
night after Mexican.
Yeah. I wonder how
we're talking about.
Yeah. I wonder how that's gone for you.
Actually, it was a pretty smooth transition. Andy and I were actually talking a little earlier about that transition. So I was at Community Church of Waterford from 2010 to beginning of 2019. But my wife and I, we finalized the adoption with our 3 girls on August 3rd of 2018. And it was just a couple weeks after that I actually sat down with our head elder, because that was the time of the year where we typically kind of do it's not really a review. It's just like, hey, let's have a conversation.
How are things
let's
going?
discern,
Right.
like, is this still, am I still the right person to lead the church family? Is it the right fit for me? And I just told him, I said, hey, I really feel like the answers are different this year and I need help discerning this.
Mm-hmm.
So we took about a month to really pray and talk that through and realized, God had something up his sleeve and something was coming. So we actually announced in October of 2018 that we were going to wrap up at the end of the year, and we had no idea what was coming next.
Yeah.
But it was a great faith teaching moment for our church family. That we had. Anytime you have transition in church, there's always people that are wondering, okay, what's the real story? Because everything was good, everything was healthy, but you're always just, the enemy likes to creep in there and make people doubt about stuff. So we actually kind of sent the letter out so everybody got it on Friday. So the kind of the bomb effect, and then just invited everybody to come on Sunday, and we were just going to have a family meeting during service time. And I 3 bar stools up on stage. It was me, our head elder, our head board member, and we just shared the story and spent some time celebrating how God had called me there in 2010, some of the great God moments in the time I was there, and then how God had just been kind of changing how he had me wired.
Sure.
That something else was coming up, and that I was going to be stepping out of that. And we just talked about kind of Abraham, about the whole I will show you as you go.
Right.
And that's kind of how we felt, was like we don't know what's next. From a human standpoint, this makes no sense to make this decision to be announcing that we are leaving when we have nothing lined up. But from a faith perspective of going, there's a time, because we had just finished this series called Sync, and it was all about being in sync with, how God wires you and what he calls you to. And that's what I used as that illustration, is that, just kind of being in sync with God. But over time, things had shifted and God was calling me to something else. And there's a time that you take to pray and discern, but then there's a time where you know the answer, and now you're stepping into disobedience if you continue down that road. And just shared that with the church. I said, I don't want that for me. I don't want that for my family. I don't want that for our church family. Yeah. So we are going to trust God in this, that he's going to show us as we go. And we're going to go ahead and in faith, we're going to announce that we are wrapping up.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that you didn't know where you were going, but shortly after that, you joined Destiny Rescue.
Yeah, shortly after, when that became public, that we had announced that we were leaving, Kirk, the CEO at the time of Destiny Rescue, had reached out, and he just wanted to get together to kind of hear, because we connected. I had been going in and doing devotions with their staff, and I'd spoken at several of their events. I was on their board. He just kind of wanted to know, like, hey, what's been going on? And about halfway through that conversation, he said, hey, I'd really value having a conversation with you about joining our team. And that totally blindsided me. Now, you know how this goes, guys, with the wives. I called the wife. She's like, yeah, I kind of expected that to happen. I'm like, well, thanks for the heads up there, dear. Like,
Nice.
I had no idea that was coming. And so it was just this awesome thing of, I got to talk with him. And then a couple days later, I met with Jason Tash, our current CEO, and we just had a chance to talk, because he was a former pastor as well. So it allowed me to say, okay, what's this look like to go into this nonprofit world with a background as a pastor? And, we talked for a couple hours, and then it kind of became okay, what's this job look like? And they're like, well, give us a week. Come up with a job description.
Yeah.
And they came back a week later and kind of rolled it out, and it was just everything in my wheelhouse and in what I was passionate about. So,
so tell us
easy
about
decision.
Yeah. So tell us about your role, what that is. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it has shifted or evolved some over time, or if it's kind of maybe stayed in the same line, but.
So I began pretty much in the role that I'm in now. We did some adjustments where I moved into a different role, and it was a lot more administrative, a lot more meetings, and it just wasn't life-giving to me.
I was gonna say, you probably
and
just
really,
lit up.
and to their to their credit, when I had those conversations with team members of going like, hey, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I would really love to do, and I'm willing to do whatever for the organization. But if at some point I can get back to what I love, that's. And in short order, God provided someone to take some of that other leadership on, and I was able to slide into my sweet spot. And so I serve as the director of engagement. We have about 30 of us on the U.S. team. 7 of us are pastors. So I serve as the director of engagement, and I'm one of those 7 pastors on staff. So I get the opportunity to really connect with people. I probably spend about half of my Sundays traveling the country, and we do what we call Rescue Sundays. So it's getting to speak at churches like you're talking about, and you've been, been here, getting ready to come back to Clinton Frame in just 3 weeks for the 3rd Rescue Sunday. And it's really, let's raise awareness on the issue. Let's connect people to God's heart on the issue. And then let's figure out what God's call to action for our church family is. So it still allows me to stay very connected to the church. And now I really get to love on and coach up pastors and helping them figure out, how do you get your church engaged? How do you get them fired up? And how do you release them for ministry to set kids free? So that's really rewarding.
Can you tell me a little bit about what Destiny Rescue is for those who don't know what Destiny Rescue is? So
Destiny Rescue, we're an international Christian organization. Our primary focus is rescuing underage girls out of sex trafficking situations. Now, in the process of that, we certainly get boys. Last year, we actually 10%. That's our highest percentage ever. It had typically been hovering around like 3 to 4% before that, but last year was 10%. So, but our primary focus starts by looking for underage girls, but in the process of doing our raids, undercover operations, of course, we go in looking for the underage girls. When we do the raid, we're taking everybody that we can. So we end up with, over half of our rescues end up being minors. But we do get a lot in that like 18 to 25 range. And then we, like I said, we had about 10% males last year. But last year alone, we were able to rescue 3,352 individuals out of trafficking situations.
My goodness.
Our average rescue is 15 years old. Our youngest 2 rescues to date are 2 8-month-olds. One of those was a kidnapping situation that we got asked to help out in, and another one was a kind of a generational situation where the girl belonged to a brothel and had a baby, and now that baby belongs to the brothel. And it's just a matter of time before something happens to that little one. We did rescue both before any abuse started, but it just shows you how deep and dark this issue goes. But we are an international organization, and so when you look at trafficking in general, human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal activity in the world by far. It makes over $150 billion a year. It's estimated about 99 billion of that is specifically sex trafficking. And we know that right now there are well over 1 million kids on the planet being sex trafficked. It happens everywhere. It happens in every country. It happens in every state in our country. It doesn't happen equally. If you're looking at a world map, Southeast Asia is about 60% of those 1 million kids that are being sex trafficked is there. There's kind of like, it's almost like Old Testament view of women, like women are seen as second or third class citizens' property. The younger ladies have less opportunities for the kinds of jobs they can have in society. And the oldest girl's responsible for the parents as they get older as well. So you just put all those factors together and it just creates trafficking at massive levels.
When you are you frequently, because you mentioned, is your organization contacted to go into places, or are you operating independently and then bringing other resources? Because I would imagine, in terms of like law enforcement or these sort of things, when you use the term raids, that's what comes to my mind. So I'm wondering, maybe how, to whatever specifics you can give, what is the kind of the formation of your effort? Where does it start when you become aware of something to the process of going in and making that contact?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So when you are doing undercover operations in a country, you have to have what's called an MOU. It's a memorandum of understanding, legal document, spells out what you can and can't do. But that allows our undercover agents to wear the hidden body cameras on them.
Okay.
And go in there. It also spells out, once we've rescued girls, do they come into our care? Do they go into government care? Are they able to be reunited with family? The sad reality is it's estimated that about 40% of trafficking starts with a family member. So when we rescue girls, we definitely have to vet families before that's even considered as a viable option. Obviously, it's the ideal option to get them back with their family if it's safe and healthy. But otherwise, it spells out. So places like the Philippines, we actually do more raids in the Philippines than any country that we work in. We've done hundreds of raids, arrested hundreds of traffickers there. But they have a great aftercare program for the kids. So we help with the rescue efforts, but then they go into government care afterwards. Other countries like Thailand and Cambodia, where they don't have as many resources for that, we do have programs in place that some of those kids come into our care.
Okay.
So like last year, the 3,352 rescues that we had, about almost 600 came into our direct care. Others either were able to be reunited with family or they went into government care for that aftercare component.
So, when a raid happens, who all is involved in that raid specifically?
Yeah. So once you have that MOU, then we're working hand in hand with local law enforcement.
Okay.
So what's beautiful is, like in places like the Philippines, you cannot be American and be a police officer.
Okay.
So just by being present there, traffickers aren't worried about you being with the law, because they assume you're the tourist, which is the target audience for these traffickers. So it allows us it's a great partnership with us to be able to work with local law enforcement. And so we're one of the few organizations that actually has our own undercover agents. We have typically 35 to 40 full-time undercover agents around the world. A lot of anti-trafficking groups they gather intel, they hand it off to local authorities, hoping something will happen, but local authorities are getting paid off to look the other way.
Yep.
So we raise up our own rescue agents. So some of these agents live in these different communities under assumed names, and they're building relationships with traffickers. They're building a network of informants, basically. So when they gather enough intel, then what you could have, like, could be a common thing, would be, let's say you and I, are working together with Destiny Rescue, and we're the undercover agents. We're building these trusted relationships. So we go to these guys and we say, hey guys, we got a business deal going down and we want to celebrate it Friday night, but we want a bunch of young girls.
Yep.
So they're like, okay, yeah, we got young girls. We can bring young girls. So let's just say you and I, Andy, we end up going in. We're the undercover agents. We go in pretending to be customers, and we go in. The traffickers show up, and then when the girls show up, when everything's in play, then we're able to send some kind of signal with the phone or whatever to the rest of our team and the local team. Then they come in to do that raid on that, and we get arrested in the process as well. So it helps keep our cover intact as well. But in the Philippines, they're really coming down on that. If you're caught trafficking 2 minors, it's a 30-year sentence, and 30 years for each additional child after that. So a few years back, we were part of arresting a couple that had 10 kids, and they each got 270-year sentences.
Wow. Good golly.
For that.
So, I mean, I would assume, and is there a degree to which Destiny Rescue is doing policy advocacy in those regions as well, or are those regions kind of realizing the issue that they have, and are they in terms of legislation, law enforcement, all of that, sort of taking that banner up themselves?
Sure. So we're definitely, because you think about this, guys, if you're going to partner with the country on this kind of work, you're putting, as an undercover agent, you are putting your life in other guys' hands.
Sure.
Because think about this, there's a reason this is the fastest growing criminal activity in the world. And the money, it's going to surpass illegal drugs and firearms in the not too distant future. And it makes sense when you think about that. If you sell me a gun, you make a profit one time. If you own a girl, thousands of times. So you're putting your life on their line. So when you're doing that, you got to make sure that you really believe that government is really serious about what they're doing. So we don't work as much on the policy side of that. I think that's the beauty of how God has called many different agencies to work together on stuff like IJM, International Justice Mission. That's their sweet spot, is working on that legislative side and really doing policy and all that kind of stuff. And we get to work in partnership with them on some things. It's just not a primary for us. But absolutely, I believe the countries that we work with, if we didn't believe they were serious and on their end willing to work on some of this policy and stuff to stem the tide, I don't think we would ever sign into that partnership.
Has the growth in in trafficking? I mean, I would imagine that developments in technology have really aided trafficking considerably.
Sure.
Would you say that that's the primary cause, or is there something else going on? That is it. Number one, do we just hear about it more, so we're more aware that it's going on? Are there other factors that are building this industry? I mean, as you said, it's going to surpass illegal firearms trading and narcotics. What would you identify as the contributing factors societally? Because it's like you said, this is an international issue. So I'm just curious if you would have
in one word, sin.
Great. Yes.
That's really what it comes down to. I mean, we are one messed up, broken world, and that shows itself in ugly, ugly ways, and nothing uglier than, I think, this issue. But I think you're, speaking to your point earlier, so trafficking looks really different in different places in the world. So even like here in the U.S., like, if we're the partying type, we're not going to go out to a bar and find a 15-year-old girl working in a bar. It's not going to happen. We've got the laws against it, and we have the bite to those laws to enforce it. But we could literally go over to Cambodia and Thailand right now, and I could take you down one city block of the red light district, and we're going to probably find 10 underage kids working. They just lie about their age. They've got laws against it. They just have no resources to enforce it. So they're really hiding in plain sight. So it's just a very different scenario than what you would find here in the U.S., where it's going to be much more high-tech, much more underground. So the technology stuff really is something that has aided the traffickers.
So I think a lot of times people see and hear about trafficking in other countries, but you had mentioned it obviously happens here in the US too. And I think, we had talked a little bit about when we met last that pornography is a slope to that. So can you talk a little bit about that in general? Because I think a lot of times when men particularly get involved with watching pornography, they don't necessarily think, oh, I'm helping out trafficking.
Yeah. Pornography is part of the monster human trafficking engine. There's no separating that.
Mhm.
I mean, if you do background on these guys that are deeply steeped and addicted into abusing and using these young girls, pornography is predominant. Like it's pretty much, I would guess it's got to be a pretty darn close to 100% factor across the board of history with that. And I think this is where the enemy gets victory in guys' lives is if a guy's, sitting behind a closed door and looking at something on their computer and doesn't feel like it's really that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not, but the enemy loves that because the enemy isn't always in a hurry. The enemy, you remember the old Casting Crown song? It's a slow fade when you get like that. That's really, I think, how the enemy plays this battle of pornography with many men. He's not in any hurry, and he will just take you down slowly over time. So guys start looking at, your basic pornography. And the problem is it's almost like how your body builds up tolerance for medication. Like eventually that same dose doesn't do it anymore. And you've got to, it's kind of like these like guardrails, if you picture those like on a road or something, you put those in place and then all of a sudden you move them a little bit and you're willing to look at this and that doesn't do it. So you got to look at something a little more extreme. So you just move those guardrails again and more, and you just keep moving the boundaries slowly. The slow fade happens. And eventually what you end up with is men who have a serious addiction to pornography. And the reality is eventually the idea of having sex with a 15-year-old girl doesn't really seem that far out there because it's the slow fade that has just slowly literally rewired their brains to think completely different about this whole issue.
With, I'm trying to think of the really the best way to ask this question, but for a man here in the U.S. who eventually crosses over that line and who that now is that's like something that that individual is gonna seek after. What is the court? Because I mean, I just sit here and I go, like on my worst day, I won't even know where to like. How to even think about where to access that or to gain that access. And yet clearly it happens. It's very real.
Yeah.
What are the places and the access points that's occurring? What circles are people getting into where they now have access to that kind of opportunity? Does that question make sense?
Sure.
Without like trying to instruct people and how to go about this.
I'm not going to name any particulars. www. No, we're not. We're not going to do that and plant some seeds that don't need to be planted. But I think, that there is such a dark underbelly to all of this, even in the U.S. I know in general, which I think we're okay to talk about the topic of that, but like even just. Like with massage parlors and stuff like that. That's very, I mean, obviously, you hear about that in like Southeast Asia and that, but that's very much a thing here too.
Sure.
That, you get these underage girls that are working in some of these places and some of the websites, like I do some deep dives just, kind of out of research and share that, we have teammates that share that information. So there's some accountability with that, but really there's so much of this that comes down to vulnerabilities and not just talking children here, but just women in general. There's websites that men can prey on young women because they're, they might be single moms or they're young girls trying to put themselves through college and have nobody to support that. And there's websites you get on that like, you set up, hey, you can just set up these kind of arrangements where I'll help pay for this. And in return, like it's just, it's totally feeding on the vulnerabilities of our women.
Gotcha.
It's guys that are looking for easy prey. And, we have a whole program called Rescue Op 120 for our teenagers. And we go into schools and we talk to the kids about how traffickers think, how they use social media. I put my dad hat on. I talk about girls, what kinds of pictures you post, what message that sends. I talk to the boys about pornography. And every time I go in, I have at least one girl that shows me a conversation on her phone that I can guarantee is a trafficker.
Yep.
And it's embarrassing sometimes that I have this conversation with my own kids from the standpoint of they hear me talk about this all the time. And every now and then something comes up where it's like, are you listening? Like you're in that naive teen years where you're thinking, no, that can't happen to me. And
so as a parent, so if you're addressing me and Joel as dads, what are some things that we can do as parents to help protect our kids and B, help in general the whole idea of human trafficking? Like what can we do sitting here in our comfy chairs in the studio? Like what can we do?
Well, let's talk a little bit on the U.S. based side of stuff.
Sure.
So when we're talking about the most vulnerable populations, when we're talking kids, we're talking migrant workers, foster care. Those are the two biggest vulnerability populations. Okay. So I encourage people in churches, groups, whatever that is. How do you support those groups? Like there's Boys and Girls Clubs. There's the Post here in town. How do you come alongside foster families? Maybe your church gets some, people to get licensed as foster families, or how do you support those networks of people, whether it's you doing it yourself as a foster parent or coming alongside a foster family and really doing that whole, it takes a village to raise kids kind of a thing. So I think there's a lot of that can happen and people can get more involved with that. As far as for your own like personal kids, I think open conversation, like having open lines is really important. And I think as parents, the challenge here is that we've got to be careful about how we set the table for that.
Sure.
Because as a dad, I think us dads, we get pretty fired up and passionate, especially in particular with our girls, as far as protecting them. And it'd be really easy to be like, you don't do this, you don't do that. It would be really easy to do that. But I think we have to be, I think our daughters need to hear our tender heart side of things, to recognize how much we value and cherish them and love them and want the best for them, and to realize that these predators are out there. And that, with our girls, we talk about that. Like if you get on something, if somebody contacts you and it's something inappropriate, you bring that to us. You are not going to get in trouble for what somebody else does.
Sure.
Now you're going to be accountable for what you decide to do in return, or how you foster or, reply to that or build that situation up. But you're not going to get in trouble if somebody, sends you some picture or sends you some really crude message or whatever. Like just come and talk to us so we can help you figure out the best way to handle that. Because, the reality is nowadays, like even little kids, the video games they play, those all have chat features on them. And there's traffickers all over those. So you just got people pretending to be somebody they're not. And, my kids know like the ceiling is you don't connect with anybody on social media that you don't know in real life. Yeah. And the reality is nowadays, even that's not
right. That's not
necessarily
a
guideline, but that's like the ceiling part of that is like you don't go past. If you don't know someone in real life, you are not connected to them in any way on social media. It's just too dangerous of a world that we live in now. You just can't trust it. So those open communication lines are really important. So we need to be aware of what our kids are doing and what our kids are on with social media. We need to be monitoring that. I think more parents need to have monitoring software with their kids' phones. I mean, you're giving immature kids, and even if they're mature kids, they're still kids. You're giving them a phone with the power to access pretty much everything on the planet.
Yep.
And especially when you're giving that to hormone-driven boys and you're just giving them a phone, like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, naturally, they're going to find their way onto those things. So that's what we've got to be able to have, the heart-to-heart conversations. It's like scripture. It's never just a God saying, don't do this, don't do it. Like, there's always, what's his heart behind that? Because his heart is always for us. And if we understand his heart, then it doesn't feel like I'm just going to do this because he says don't
Right.
do it. Like if they understand, for all of us who are dads, if our kids understand our hearts behind it, they're going to be much more receptive and open to following that wisdom. So
For I think, as our kids and Andy and I have these conversations all the time, it's been the ongoing thing of I don't know, what did I was talking with some educators the other day, and I I just said, and because I've seen a ton of I'm always looking at within adolescent studies. I mean, I work for a youth serving organization now, and I'm always trying to stay very, very reasonably up to date in terms of technology access with kids and what it's doing, and across the spectrum, be ye secular or faith-based, everyone is saying the same. Like, it's one of the few times, I think, where we across the country here, where everyone is speaking pretty, like, the people who know and are doing the research and are in, I think pretty much everyone knows. Like, the results are in. And I said to somebody the other day, I was like, you're putting a gun in your kid's hands. Just the bullets are super slow, but it's loaded, and it will make an impact. And I think it makes an impact in this particular area. We don't think about that piece.
Well, that's an interesting point, though, Joel. If both your kids and my kids are trained in 4-H, the 4-H shooting sports, we wouldn't have just gone out and said, "Hey, here's a gun," right?
Sure.
I mean, like, really, we wouldn't have.
Nope.
But we do that as parents to our kids with the phone. Like, a lot of times we just say, "Here's a phone," and we may put restrictions on it, but we don't even talk about the fact that why we're doing that, or what the restrictions mean, and how to actually be safe with it, as opposed to just saying, "Okay, here's your phone."
Because it is. I mean, really, to Chris, to your point, like, it's a direct line of access to your child, and people who have nefarious intentions, who like it is, and it's super easy. I mean, it's just super easy to gain access to them, which is, our policy has been, and I don't think it's just, my kids don't have social media at all at this age, like, just zero access to that. And if I find out they are trying to get access to social media, I mean, I treat it like they have stolen a vehicle. Like, I just, like, it's serious, it's serious business.
Yeah, my 16-year-old has a track phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's all she's going to have for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And
what, like you said, the studies are so conclusive.
Yeah, I just
the depression level of kids, like especially young girls, they're just getting on there and comparing themselves to all these other what they're seeing in magazines and articles about what women should look like. And it's just absolutely devastating on their self-esteem and image.
Without going, down the rabbit hole too far, I mean, this is the most. This is this past fall. This one of the seminars I was at. A researcher who's done extensive research in this area. They do these national. I'm going to get the name of the studies, but it's National Mental Health Wellbeing amongst Adolescents specifically.
Okay.
And so 2012 was the year that all this, it just started tanking heavy, and we're talking to the point where they had a hard time figuring out what in the world would have caused such a dramatic decline in mental health amongst adolescents. Because in 2012, like, there were no wars really going on. There was not like any major like economic crisis or like anything else, going on at the time. It's when the iPhone hit market saturation. And when the technology hits saturation, that's when youth gain access to it typically, right? Because the prices have gone down, and mom and dad are like, okay, well, Junior can have one or whatever. And then from then on out, just the steady decline of what and I just think about the population you're talking about, I mean, that are at risk, if their mental health is already compromised, if they are a vulnerable population in that alone, and the right predator comes along, right? I just, it's like
fish in a barrel.
Man, it just seems like it's just how easy that would be. And again, this is not, I mean, these are, you've seen it. I'm sure plenty. It's not a scare tactic. This is a real, like this. These are real life scenarios. This is exactly how this happens.
And we weren't part of this particular case, but in Fort Wayne, right before COVID, there was a 14-year-old girl, and a very similar thing. She met somebody on social media. You think about that. If we were predators and we were getting online and creating fake accounts, what are we looking for when we're looking at all these other teenagers' accounts? We're looking for depression, just loneliness, suicidal tendencies, ones that don't get along with their parents well, right?
Even better.
And how easy is that for us to pretend to be that sympathetic ear and be like, no, you're amazing just the way you are. Your parents shouldn't be able to tell you what to do. Why do you listen to them? You should just leave. You're old enough to get out on your own. And that's what happened with her. Was the guy convinced her to run away. She runs away, meets up with him before she even knows what happens. He takes the phone, disables all her social media, destroys her phone, and he starts to abuse her and then starts selling her to friends to abuse her. And the only reason she got rescued was because a police officer went to a car that was parked in an illegal zone, and it was a woman who was transporting this girl.
Oh, my goodness.
And when he went to talk to her, he looked in the back seat and saw this girl who was obviously very young, with all this makeup and dressed up way older than she was.
Yeah.
And realized that it was a trafficking situation. That's the only reason that she got rescued.
Man.
And that was right in Fort Wayne.
Yeah. So I think for those that are listening, when we talk about these things, I mean, the purpose is always to be real. It is absolutely to be real. It's never to give you to give anyone a sense of like we should be fearful about every single thing around every corner. At the same time, to be discerning is a necessary thing.
And social media really is the biggest thing. You see movies like, everybody can quote Liam Neeson, right? The Taken movies, and even The Sound of Freedom came out. The storyline of kidnapping.
Yeah,
it's a Hollywoodized, that's the storyline we want, kind of thing. But the reality is that is not extremely common.
Yeah,
when it's much more traffickers that are exploiting vulnerabilities over time and grooming kids for this. So we got to be careful not to think like, okay, where's my kid? Where's my kidnap it? Like, yes, be diligent about knowing where your kid is. Make sure they're smart and they know what they're looking for, and being aware and being with others, not by themselves. Like, yeah, absolutely do that. But recognize that if you're doing that and you're not paying attention to the social media side of things, that's the bigger threat.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm Chris. I wonder for you personally. I mean, when you say 3,352, I mean that's got to feel pretty good.
Sure.
And yet, for every single one of them, there's plenty more.
Yep. Absolutely.
For you, psychologically, mentally, spiritually, when you look at that reality, what keeps you going? What keeps you? Because I get a sense that you're as focused on the mission as ever, which we're so grateful for. And maybe you could speak to for you and for others on the organization, because I mean you guys are looking. It's just constant darkness. Like you are perpetually aware of just the darkest underbelly of any given society. Yep. How do you do it? How do you stay well in the midst of all that? Because I just have to imagine like there's a lot of rough stories again and again.
Guys, I'm reminded of I think about in the book of Numbers when Moses sends out the 12 spies to check out the land, and all of the spies see the same thing, but 10 of them come back, and what do they say?
Yeah, this is terrible. We can't do this.
We can't possibly do this. Giant, right? Yeah. And the other two who see the exact same thing, they come back, and they're basically like, let's go.
Yeah.
God's got this. And I think for me, that plays a lot into this role, because I think that situation applies for all of us that have giants that feel overwhelming in our lives. When that happens, you have two choices. You look at the size of the problem, or you look at the size of your God. And we serve a big, big God, and he is knocking down doors, and he's setting kids free. And I think another part of that is like, I get that idea that, okay, 3,352 is amazing. That's a ton of kids. but we've also said there's over 1 million kids being sex trafficked.
Yeah.
But I've also got to sit down with these rescue kids. I've gotten to hug these rescue kids and love on these rescue kids and hear the stories of these rescued kids. And every single one of those kids matters.
Yep.
Like think about it. If this was a situation with one of your kids, with one of your daughters, would you want my team to not
Sure.
do whatever they could
Yep.
to get her out, even if it meant that there was 1 million other,
Yeah.
it for everyone we get out, it matters. And I think the other thing you got to think about is the ripple effect. So like if you go to our website, destinyrescue.org, under Get Involved, there's a tab for advocacy. And there's we have documentaries. There's like 5 documentaries. We did one of those a few years ago with Clinton Frame. And the one we did, actually, it's called You Are Beautiful. And it's one girl's story of how she got sold into trafficking by her mom. And it tells her story of what happened, like growing up, the poor village she was at, how she ended up going into town and thought she was going to work at a restaurant and then ends up working at this bar where she's got to sit with men and ends up getting abused by them. And she's trying to, talk to her mom about not wanting to do this. And her mom's saying, hey, you got to do what you got to do. And is just totally condoning this. And then you actually hear audio files of the night that our agents are with her and talking back and forth about her in particular to get her out of that situation, which is really cool. And then she gets rescued. She comes into our aftercare. And one of the things, the title of it is You Are Beautiful. And that comes from the fact that day after day, she would show up at our residential program and the ladies there would constantly say, you are beautiful. You are beautiful. But for the longest time, she could not receive it because in her mind, the world had changed the way she thought about herself. In her mind, she was not valuable anymore. She thought she was going to have to do that work the rest of her life because it was all she was good for in her mind. That's what the enemy and the world had taught her was her value. And so for her to start having people speak truth into her life, that she was a daughter of the King of Kings and had infinite worth. And, she went on to get introduced and accept Jesus Christ as her savior. She felt a calling to start working with children. And as you see her story continue through the documentary, you just see this ripple effect of hundreds of kids that she's interacting with and pouring into. So every life that's rescued has a ripple effect of hundreds, if not thousands, of other lives. In fact, part of our Empower program, our aftercare program, it's a Christian-based counseling program, and part of that's about forgiveness. Now, all of us have walked with Jesus long enough to know that sometimes it's not easy to forgive.
Yeah.
That can be a hard process, but can you imagine talking to kids about forgiveness who have been raped over and over and over and over again and talking to them about forgiveness?
Yeah.
She learned about forgiveness. First person she went to forgive, she went back home to her home village to forgive her mom.
Wow.
And she ended up leading her mom to Christ, and it's not in the documentary, but she ended up ultimately leading her entire family to Christ.
Wow.
So this ripple effect of, it's not just 3,352.
Yeah.
That's how many got rescued, but that's hundreds of thousands of ripple effect lives from that. And every single one of those matters.
So, Chris, you've touched on it some here, but in terms of the aftercare process, because it's not just about getting them out, it's about what happens to them after they get out. What does that look like for you guys? How do you put that together for them? Yeah,
you're right. It doesn't do us any good to get them out if we can't keep them free, right? So it has to be a holistic ministry. So that Empower program is the kind of trauma resiliency program. It's a 10-week program that they go through. Obviously, it's not like they're just suddenly healed at the end of that. It's just getting them started on that healing process. But so every girl that comes into our care, and I remember earlier we talked about sometimes they're reunified with family, sometimes they go into government care. If they come into our care, then they have what we call a freedom plan. So the freedom plan basically is everybody who works with each girl is going to come up with a plan that's going to help them succeed for the long haul. So they're going to look at, what do they need? Is it a younger kid that was rescued? Okay, so education is the need. Is it older? Well, then vocation is going to be the need. What do they need psychologically? What do they need medically? What do they need emotionally, relationally, spiritually? All of those things are going to be looked at to create a unique freedom plan for that child. And what's really neat is we partner with a lot of local ministries because we can just we can grow so much faster that way. If we go to a new country, if we got to start from ground zero, it takes years to just build up that stuff. But if we, like when we were in Zimbabwe, we went there. There's essentially a ministry that's an orphanage there that's been there 25 years, already well established, already trusted, already has relationships with those local government leaders. We come in and start partnering with them. They have a facility that can hold up to 70 kids. So kids who are hungry, kids who are homeless, they're able to do that. They've got some agricultural training on campus that they done, and they've done this for 25 years. Max out at 70 kids. So we come in and we kind of add three components. So we add field agents who are trained. So we add the staff and the funding and the training, so that these field agents who know how to go out and identify kids who are being sex trafficked can go out and have those conversations, bring kids into the program quickly. That whole counseling side, the empower side, we add the staff and the training and the funding for that. And then the other part is the TOJ, training on the job. So they go out, they find local business leaders who are interested in things that the girls want. So like in Africa, sewing, catering, hair salon are the three big ones that the girls want. So we go find business leaders, and most of them, because it's connections through the church, are Christian business leaders as well. So they're not just building skill levels in the kids, they're mentoring them spiritually as well, which is awesome. Yeah. So let's say, Andy, that you've got you own a catering business, and you agree to take 5 of my girls. So we're gonna come to an agreement on a 6-month agreement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay their full salary for 2 months, 2/3 for 2 months, and 1/3 for 2 months. In return, you're going to teach them everything they need to know about working and possibly even running a catering business. Gotcha. So at the end of 6 months, you've just got this win-win situation. If you have openings, you know what you got, you trained them.
Right.
And if not, they're ready to go out and look for a job somewhere else.
Right.
So it's a great win-win situation, and you're able to take kids who have only known getting used and abused on a daily basis, and within a matter of months, their lives have completely changed, and the trajectory of their lives is completely different.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think there's just something, to be said for really a multifaceted approach, you said this, a holistic approach toward healing, because while there are spiritual needs, obviously, in all of that, following abuse, they need a way to support themselves. They need a way, and without that support, by the way, without those skills, whatever, they find themselves very easily back in the similar situation that they were in. And so, I think for anyone listening, when you're thinking about partnering with an organization, and we certainly hope that you partner with Destiny Rescue, if that's something that, an area that you want to pursue and want to support. The thing that I love is that, I think a ministry such as yours really has to look at the whole situation, has to look at the whole person and empower the whole person, toward greater independence, toward greater healing. Because just to get them out of the situation is one thing, but just to give them an opportunity for a better future, and to see themselves being able to contribute to their own, like to really stand on their own 2 feet and say, man, I'm making a decision to walk forward from this. That's really, really powerful. Really, really powerful.
And it's a fun time for us too, from the standpoint of, we've been doing this since 2001. So we're at the point now where we've got girls who were rescued 10 years ago that are now project leaders. And pouring into the next generation, and talking about being able to completely understand what these girls have gone through. That's a pretty powerful thing to see. So.
All right, so we appreciate you being on the show tonight, but first, before we let you go, we can't let you go without doing.
And now it's time for the Dudes and Dads Pop Quiz.
All right, guys. So Pop Quiz, if you've never joined us, is basically a time that we ask Chris random questions that he can't prepare for, that have nothing to do with the topip of rescue.
Okay.
So,
Do you get to go first?
You can go first, Joel.
Oh, fantastic.
You have one ready?
Tonight I'm feeling a little bit off the cuff, so we're gonna try. Chris, if you were made to like right now, if I said, okay, you need to grab 3 things. I'm sending you to a deserted island. You got to grab 3 things before you leave. You've only got a matter of minutes to grab them. What are you taking? What are you taking with you? And you're gonna be on this deserted island. We're gonna put you on there for we'll do a couple weeks. Okay,
Couple weeks.
couple weeks on a deserted island. You got 3 items you can take with you. What are they?
Man, I'm a guy, so I'm thinking all food items.
Nicely done.
I like it.
Nothing
Yeah.
else seems to really matter at that point. So, and I eat like a 5-year-old.
Oh, nice.
So,
Okay.
you know, my first thought as you're asking the question was, where do I get a truckload of cherry Pepsi?
Cherry
Oh.
Pepsi.
Because that's definitely one.
That's one of them. Okay.
I love pizza, but I'm a little worried about how, you know,
Yeah.
it's gonna spoil a little bit.
Right.
there. So-
3 weeks with Pete.
There's
But-
some practical concerns here.
But, you know, because I eat like a 5-year-old, Lunchables, I think have a shelf life of 7.5 years. So
I think you're right.
I could
yeah.
get the bologna and cheese Lunchables and
Perfect.
just really,
Cherry Pepsi,
really
Lunchables.
stock up on those.
Okay.
Wow.
I mean, great answer, but
So-
I would encourage you to maybe think about that more.
in case, just
Just
in
in
case.
case you find yourself
Well,
in a
let's hope
situation.
it's not a, you know,
Yeah,
not
well-
a Tom Hanks.
Yeah. Well said.
So maybe I should take a volleyball as my third
Well
one,
said.
just in
Yeah.
case, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Which band or artist, dead or alive, would play at your funeral?
Ooh, there we go.
Which band or artist? Man, so I am a huge kid of the 80s. So, man, you could put together, you know, a whole crew of 80s bands.
Mm.
So I don't know, Def Leppard.
Oh,
Bon
there we
Jovi,
go.
Like, I think
There we
there's
go.
a few of those that I would definitely be all about.
I once saw Journey and Def Leppard play at the same show together.
Oh.
They were co-billed. That was
Oh, wow. That's
that
an
was
interesting
it
one.
was an experience.
Yeah, last year I went to Penn State.
Okay.
And Journey and Toto were in concert
Nice.
together. So
Nice. Toto's made a hard comeback. Chris, in a zombie apocalypse, which
Cherry
one?
Pepsi.
Which,
Definitely,
yeah, see,
definitely Cherry Pepsi.
Still Cherry Pepsi. In the zombie apocalypse, Chris, of your family members, who's the last one standing?
That'd be me.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. would
With
be
the
me.
cherry Pepsi and pizza.
Yeah.
in
Bold
hand.
statement.
Yeah,
What
I would-
is it about your skill set that enables you to survive in a zombie apocalypse the longest?
Of my family?
Yeah.
Because I can run the fastest.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
All right. Okay.
right.
right,
Well,
you just have to
I'm-
be able to outrun one at a time, right? That's really what it comes down to.
That's fair.
Don't have to be the fastest always, just faster
That's
than at
fair.
least one.
Joel, yours are like the questions that never would happen. Mine are like the things that could possibly
I
happen
love
or
the
did.
practical and like the deeply metaphysical. Yeah, sure.
All right, so what's the worst job? We've talked about your best job. I mean,
Yeah,
your
yeah.
best job, but a job that matters most to you. But what's your worst job that you've ever had?
Oh man, I've had a lot of those.
Ooh.
So when I was in
Like, let me
when
tell
I
you
was-
about this church
when
I was
in
at.
college, no, when I was in college, I did those, you know, the temp agencies.
Oh, yeah.
Where you just
Oh.
like work for a week or two.
Yeah.
Oh, those are horrid. Those things. There was one of those ones where, you know, the like the block glass you get for like basement
Yeah.
windows.
Yeah.
And the guy that goes in that does the mortar work and everything, he goes in like an hour earlier. And then we go in and we've got the little, like the silver hand tool that you go and scrape all the excess
Yes.
mortar out of.
Yes.
And you got to go around twice and do that. And then you got to go around with like one of those green scrubby pads. And then you got to go around with like a wool pad and
Mhm.
like do that. And like you're doing that for hours. And you can't get it enough with with the gloves on. So you
Mhm.
got to do it barehanded. And then you get all those like little silver like
Ooh.
splinters in your fingers. And then you ever have, if you get that and you get near anything
It's-
hot, you
it's-
touch anything hot,
oh.
it like,
It's
like-
terrible.
like, it's-
Okay.
like that. I did that for a week. That
Okay.
was horrid. And then Woolies Fish Market, being in the refrigerator for 8 hours a day with like nice little stylish hairnet and saran wrapping fish for 8 hours. That's right up there too.
Okay.
So that was a 2-for-1 there.
That it was.
Yeah,
I love,
thanks. I appreciate
love
it,
that.
Chris.
Bonus. Chris, what book should we be reading right now aside from the Bible? I'll put that caveat in there.
What book should you be reading right now? Gosh, what was the last one I did? Yeah, this is not deeply spiritual at all. I just did the latest Hunger Games one.
Oh.
The prequel one, the song Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes or whatever that
Total
one
surprise
was.
to me. I did not have him.
didn't see that
I
coming.
didn't have him. Yeah, I didn't have him labeled as
you
Hunger
didn't go
Games,
that
guys. No.
I didn't read
But
the
I
books.
feel like, with your, zombie apocalypse and island desertion, the whole Hunger Games feels like
It's
it
on-
kind of fits
it
into
does.
your
on brand.
theme that you had
On
going
brand.
on there. So,
100%. Nice.
Yeah. My last question is, what's the favorite thing that you've bought this year?
Besides cherry Pepsi.
Yeah.
Let's see.
It could be pizza. I mean,
It might be the Chief ice cream I had.
oh.
I'm trying to think of have I done anything like, it's the thing that stinks is you get older, you get more excited about projects that just wouldn't excite you.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm excited about the fact that in a couple months I got an inch of gravel coming to
Nice.
cover the whole driveway. That was never something that would have excited me 10 years ago.
I'd be excited about that now.
Yeah, me too.
So
I
I'm
got the
with you.
truck in. Got the truck in because we were putting in pastures for the horses last summer, and the reverse decided to stop working.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Got the transmission fixed, so my truck actually. Every time you pull in a parking lot, you got to be like, "All right, where do I park?
How am I gonna get out of
I can
here?"
Pull out forward." And now I have reverse, so that's probably the best money I've spent this year.
The reverse.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations, Chris.
Because if there's zombies, you got to have reverse
That's-
too.
you
gotta-
better.
You hit them, but you got to back up and check.
You better.
So, yeah.
Well, congratulations, Chris. You have successfully passed the Dudes and Dads Pop Quiz. Well done. We do thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, you bet.
This is super helpful. A really great, a great topic, a great thing to be reflecting on. Chris, where can people find out all about whether it's you or Destiny Rescue? Where do we want to send them?
So destinyrescue.org is our website. So there's a ton of great information on that. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. If you're listening to this really soon, then just come on over to Clinton Frame on the 26th in the morning. What time's service at? I'm going to be here speaking
10:30
at the 10:30 service on the 26th here at Clinton Frame. So, and I'll tell you two big fundraisers that are coming up this fall. Just so you know, dates is August 15th through the 18th at Community Church of Waterford over on County Road 21 past Kirchers is the Sale That Saves. That's a garage sale that started with the idea to rescue one kid, $1,500 to rescue a kid. And as of right now, they have raised enough over 8 years, with this year being the 8th one. But we've added corporate sponsors this year, so we got businesses getting behind it. And they have raised enough to rescue 125 kids.
Wow.
4-day garage sale. And it's all about setting kids free. So August 15th to the 18th, and then September 7th. Keep it on your calendar. We don't know the exact location, but the Goshen Rotary does a freedom walk every year. It's been at the Goshen High School the last 3 years.
Okay.
They're talking about making it like a 5K, 10K this year, so it could be at Fiddler. I'm not really sure exactly, but if you follow Goshen Rotary, they have a Facebook page, and you can keep an eye on that. But set aside that date, September 7th. But two of our actually biggest fundraisers in the country right here in the Goshen area.
That's awesome.
Lovely.
Pretty
Lovely.
cool.
Awesome. Well, get on board, folks. Get on board. Get over there. Support Destiny Rescue. And Andy's waiting to touch the button. Are you touching the button? He did. All right, touch the button. Hey, everybody, as always, you can head over to dudesanddads.com.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where you were going with the button thing. I
Okay.
didn't know if you were going to start.
Okay, well,
We did.
well-oiled machine over here. Dudes and Dads podcast at gmail.com. If you got any show ideas, responses, harsh rebukes, whatever you want to send over there, feel free to email us.
And you can always call our voicemail, 574-213-8702. And you won't wake Joel or I up.
You will not, but we will listen to it and possibly put it on air. Guys, we're so grateful for each and every one of you for tuning on in. Remember, share us, like us, do all that. We appreciate it.
Subscribe us.
Subscribe to us, all those good things. And until next time, we wish you grace
And peace.